Good morning and welcome to everyone who's joined us. I'm really happy to have you with us today. My name is Lucy Randolph and I'm the Senior Export Manager for Dairy at AHDB. I'm really excited to bring you this webinar and to talk you through the report that is being commissioned by AHDB. The report will be sent to you post-event, but this is to go through it and give you the chance to ask any questions about it. We're very much hoping to follow this up in September, COVID obviously permitting, with a trade mission to Vietnam, a British presence at a key exhibition there, plus meetings with key buyers, etc. I just wanted to give you a bit of an update of what I'm doing here at AHDB. I'm responsible for supporting the British dairy farmers by enhancing the profitability and sustainability of the British dairy sector in export markets around the world. And we're looking to do this through information and market promotion, through things like international trade shows, promotional events, buyer networking, conferences, etc. This space looks pretty different at the moment. Being unable to be in market, we're having to try and find inventive ways to keep up the British dairy profile, as well as trying to keep exporters in touch with market developments and buyers. We've previously done a few webinars, a locally resourced trade show in China, so hopefully still bringing some content to you guys. This unprecedented year has been helpful in the fact that I've finally been able to put together some market promotion material that will be fantastic for when we're back out there. We are doing some sort of new image photography, a dairy export video, a mixed reality project. That will be a very cool and inventive way of educating different countries on British dairy and some of our key messages. This is all slightly slowed down to COVID regs of filming, but we should be getting this done fairly soon. Next slide, David, please. Oh, we've got a bit of a delay, I think, on some of the slides. There we go, fantastic. Onto my sort of proposed schedule of activity for 2021, and this is all very much fingers crossed, COVID willing, hopefully looking to sort of get it back out there, but looking to do some virtual sort of promotional events, hopefully one in Singapore. We're looking to link up in the USA on the ECRM platform, dairy meetings over there. Sort of the main in-person thing I'm looking to do is the Middle East Inward Mission in July, hoping to bring over some buyers from the Middle East, a couple of media, and really sort of introduce them to British dairy and show them what we do, how we do it, and set up some meetings. And then September is hopefully where we're hanging our hats and we can get out and start traveling again with the Vietnam trade mission and exhibition, you know, Hong Kong, Canada, Singapore and China, sort of following on of trade shows, some of which will be showcased. It'll just depend on the sort of space at the time, whether it'll be sort of a showcase or whether you guys are looking to come with us. We'll have to very much take a view nearer the time. But anyway, right, moving on to the main events. This webinar is to give you an overview of dairy opportunities in Vietnam and to talk you through the report, the regulatory framework, and an opportunity to also ask all of our speakers any questions you might have at the end of all the presentations. So we're going to do that Q&A right at the end. This is pretty timely, I feel, as the sort of UK-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement came into effect on the 1st of Jan. This has been modelled almost exactly on the EU-Vietnam FTA. So businesses who've already exported to Vietnam after the UVFTA came into effect on the 1st of August 2019, and you should all be familiar with this. Can I ask our speakers to turn on their cameras, please, so I can introduce you? There we go, brilliant. First of all, we will have Brian Bulloch, who is the Executive Director of BritCham Vietnam, which is the British Chamber in Vietnam. Give us a little wave. We also have Hieu, who's the Trade Manager for the Department for International Trade. And we also have Vincent Trelouet, Founder and CEO of Provigood. Great, fantastic. If you could turn off your cameras now, that would be fantastic. So just a bit of housekeeping. You will all stay muted throughout the opening and closing sessions, although questions can be submitted via the Q&A box, which is on your right-hand side. Make sure your laptops are plugged into a mains power source, obviously. The sessions will be recorded and available on the AHDB website if you want to revisit any of the content. And there is a feedback survey, and we would ask you to really do take the time to complete this so that we can make sure that we can improve similar events and continue the conversations afterwards. So without further ado, I'd like to pass on to Brian Bulloch, who will be giving us an overview of the Vietnam economy and Vietnam dairy market. Thank you, Brian. Hopefully we can hear you.
Thank you, Lucy. I hope you all can hear me okay. Raise your hand if you can't. So again, my name is Brian Bulloch with BritCham Vietnam. And today I'd like to give you an overview of Vietnam's economy and the dairy market here. Next slide, please. Another one, please. So today, the purpose of my overview is to give you a little bit about Vietnam's economy, produce some consumer profiles, and how those consumers are consuming dairy products, what the market is like in Vietnam, and the competitive landscape here in Vietnam as well. Next slide, please. So the Vietnam economy. Vietnam is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. It has a thriving middle class. And as you know, we have a brand new UK free trade agreement in place. And next slide. Let's make sure we're on here. So Vietnam's economic development over the past 30 years has been remarkable. Since the Doan renovation, in English is what it's translated to, launched in 1986, the economy has spurred a rapid amount of growth. Between 2002 and 2018, GDP per capita has increased 2.7 times, reaching over 2023 in 2019, and more than pounds in 2019, and more than 45 million people were lifted out of poverty. This is due to the deep integration with the global economy. The Vietnamese economy has been especially hit hard by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, but has shown some remarkable resilience. The initial health impact of the outbreak had not been as severe as it is in other countries. Follow the news. Sorry, I thought I heard something. Vietnam is one of the few countries in the world not to expect a recession due to the COVID pandemic, and its growth rate for 2020 is far less than pre-crisis projections at 2.91%. The economy is expected to rebound very strongly in 2021, although not as expected, but it will be positive. Before 2020 and the COVID pandemic, the GDP had been growing steadily for 10 consecutive years, with 2019 marking the third year to have a GDP growth above 7%. It's expected to be one of the few countries to experience positive GDP growth in 2020, while the rest of the world enters the recession. Among other Asian countries, Vietnam is one of the only 3 members, the others being Myanmar, Brunei, to record positive GDP growth in 2021, and the following years, GDP growth is expected to return to pre-COVID levels. Next slide, please. Vietnam has the third largest population in Southeast Asia and continues to grow. The population of 97 million is expected to be 100 million by the end of 2024. With the median age of 30 years old, Vietnam has a relatively young population of 55.8 million or 57.8% of the population. Vietnam has approximately 36 million urban residents in 2020 compared to just fewer than 14 million in 1990, with urban areas contributing more than half the country's GDP. With 38% of the population currently living in cities and an annual growth rate of 2%, urbanization is expected to rise quite rapidly over the next decade and reach 53% by 2040. Vietnam's disposable income is expected to grow very quickly to 2,419 pounds in 2023. Total consumer spending is also growing at the highest annual rate in the region at 7.4%, rising from 53 billion in 2008 to 140.6 billion in 2019. As a result of this growth, Vietnam is well marked as a promising market for consumption of global trends with a plethora of foreign brands and products. Next slide, please. So yes, following the economic partnership agreement with Japan and the trade deal with Singapore, Vietnam was the third trade deal in Asia. The UK-Vietnam trade deal came into effect on January 1st, as you know, and this bilateral deal is locking the benefits of the UK's existing trading relationship with Vietnam through the EU-Vietnam FTA. So a little bit of a summary with the FTA. Eventually, 99% of tariffs will be eliminated by its full implementation, including some top things like machinery and mechanical appliances that are the high exports. Businesses will maintain access to Vietnam's service sectors, including the architectural services, e-commerce, agreements prohibiting the agreements that prohibits custom duties on electronic transmissions and on financial services. By the time of full implementation, Vietnam stands to benefit from tariff savings of 114 million pounds on Vietnamese exports. And for UK exports, this figure will be around 36 million pounds. Next slide, please. So the UK is currently Vietnam's third largest trading partner in Europe after Germany and the Netherlands. It's the second largest Southeast Asian exporter to the UK after Thailand, with bilateral trade between the two countries equaling $6.7 billion in 2019. The main exports to the UK include mobile phones, garments, textiles, and seafood. The UK is also looking to Vietnam for goods and services such as education, renewable energy, technology, healthcare, and infrastructure. In fact, it's the largest foreign investor in Vietnam's education sector. Next slide, please. So the really interesting part about this is consumer demographics. There are two key demographics channels, and that makes them the most numerous and accessible consumer for imported dairy products. Modern trade channels remain the most popular channel for dairy products. And second, income levels and social classes are important factors. Vietnam's income gap is among the highest in the region. The upper middle class and middle class combined account for 15% of the population, while the working and non-working classes account for almost 60%. The richest 20% of the population possess over half of all disposable income. So these two demographic factors prove to be important consideration for UK businesses wanting to export dairy products. And that affects the marketing and sales distribution strategies. So let's go on to the next slide. So Vietnam's strong consumer confidence and rising household income levels have contributed to an overall increase in consumer spending. And in the ASEAN countries, it ranks second in terms of consumer expenditure. Total household spending is predicted to grow by 47% from 91.5 billion pounds in 2017 to 134 billion pounds in 2021. The key spending trends in Vietnam are food and beverage. The largest household spending in Vietnam is on food and non-alcoholic drinks, followed by housing and utilities, transport, and in recent years, Vietnamese consumers have increasingly become more willing to purchase premium items to enhance the quality of life, notably healthcare and organic products. And the quality of such products have been increasingly important to Vietnamese consumers. Next slide, please. Can I get the next set? There we go. Thank you. So dairy is not traditionally consumed in large quantities in Vietnam, but this is largely due to the historical production and availability, and some traditional diet developing over agricultural products. However, as income and living standards increase, the country increasingly is becoming a world economy, and consumption has increased. It's lower compared to some of the neighboring countries. Consumption of dairy products is considerably higher in urban areas rather than the rural areas, and they spend 3 times more on dairy products than rural areas. Furthermore, there's a relationship between the consumption of dairy products between urban consumers and the level of income. Consumption by low-income groups is notably lower than that of middle and higher incomes, while the consumption of dairy products among higher income groups is greater than the middle income. Next slide. The markets for dairy products in Vietnam has grown fairly quickly in recent years in both volume and value terms. However, per capita consumption remains low when compared to other countries. The market for drinking milk grew rapidly at 12.5% in value terms over the period of 2013 to 18, and that's forecasted to grow quickly over the period between 19 and 23. Fresh drinking milk, interestingly, is have high interest because of health and well-being, and combined with the increased affordability, and that's driving the consumption of drinking milk. With drinking milk, plain milk is preferred over flavored, and it accounts for 60% of the market in terms of 20% for flavored products. Almost all the plain milk in Vietnam is shelf stable, so that's the box milk and consume the shelf, and it's whole milk. In specific case of drinking milk, children have been notable target consumer group due to the positive perceived and positive impacts it has on bone strength and growth. And increasingly, there's a health conscious consumer of young adults, and the elderly have been targeted for fresh milk consumption. Next slide. There's some new trends that have been emerging quite rapidly. For example, there's a lot more supplements in powdered milk, nut milks, soy and barley, and in addition to traditional cow milk. The total value of branded soy milk consumption increased by 13% in the first 10 months of 2019. I think that's interesting. This might be an indication of growing consumer interest in the plant-based markets. The dairy industry is also changing its structure due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, modern channels continue to outperform the traditional channel. Milk is one of the products with increased purchase volume through e-commerce platforms, which is quite significant here. And the sales of that channel have grown in double digit for many quarters. Being aware of this trend, market players have been actively increasing penetration into modern trade channels and have started to see results. Next slide, please. So, powdered milk. Milk formula is the largest category of baby food and the second largest category of dairy products in Vietnam. You can find powdered products everywhere. It's visible everywhere. And it's worth some 957,000 pounds in 2018. This category grew rapidly over the period of 2013 to 18 at a rate of 7.3%. And it's set to stagnate going forwards. And this is because the market for baby food in Vietnam is going through a transition because of some government regulations that prevent advertisements of baby food and formulas for babies under 2 for obvious reasons, which is, or maybe not so obvious, but to promote breast milk, breastfeeding. So there's a strong government campaign to back the nursing groups in favor of breastfeeding. Cheese. So this is it's not a traditional product. Its consumption is driven mostly in Western food and Western styles, and this also includes the use of there are a lot of Western food outlets and services, obviously, are the consumers of cheese, especially pizza and fast food. Due to the lack of the kind of difference, it's not surprising that cheese consumers are mainly focused in the urban areas where that knowledge is more prevalent. The spreadable cheese is the most popular type, and you'll hear more about that later, accounting for 85% of the retail cheese market in both volume and value. It's sometimes just consumed as a snack, just straight or with on something. Cheese cannot yet be considered part of the daily diet. It's not commonly consumed at home, other than children. So this is it's an important channel, I think, to be considered as in terms of market potential. So back a little bit more on cheese. The current traditional cheese is the most. I'll just keep this one short, but cheese is increasingly incorporated into some Vietnamese dishes. I might want to catch up on the slide. If you can go a couple more. So another one. I skipped ahead. I'm sorry about that. There we go. Again, just a little more on the spreadable cheese. Spreadable cheese is the most popular, and the international players in this market are Bell Vietnam and Group Lactalis, and a local player with Vina Milk, and they lead this category in 2019. And I explained, I think, earlier the limitations with cheese, and it's just the other cheeses besides spreadable is the knowledge of its use. So Bell Vietnam is the leader in spreadable cheeses in this, and they continue to employ diverse marketing activities with this famous laughing cow as everyone's favorite. Next slide. Our next topic is butter, and that's a lot like cheese. It's not traditional in traditional cooking, but it's driven a lot by bakeries and restaurants that are serving Western-style foods. Bakery goods are a key driver of the butter, but in recent years, there's more of a trend to home baking and not so much the sort of commercial baking. Nonetheless, the market for butter remains small, and the food service is still the main driver of that. Next slide, please. All of our favorites, ice cream is in the market. 2020 was dominated by 3 companies. One with 43% market share, Keto Group, Unilever with 11% market share, and Milk with 9%. It's a fast-growing segment. The sales have reached over 121 million pounds in 2021, and increasing at 6.5% compared to 2019. The takeaway ice cream is the majority of the sales, the kind you just pull out of a freezer in the convenience store, with 70%. Take-home ice cream occupied 30%. I think competition is fierce as they try to gain this market share by diversifying the existing products, such as the new flavors with durian, the boba tea flavors that appeal to the young consumer. Next question, or next next slide, please. So this is one really interesting aspect about the dairy market is the condensed milk, which is worth over 270 million pounds in 2020. It's a stable growth rate at 5% per year over the next 5 years. And there's strong distribution of condensed milk. And there's a long tradition of using it. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. Condensed milk has long attracted Vietnamese as a product of older generations, and that because they've loved it since childhood. And this goes back to the 1980s and 90s when Vietnam was undergoing the major economic and political transition. Many goods and materials were scarce during this time, and the condensed milk was quickly embraced as a nutritional supplement when other foods were scarce, as a way of combating some malnutrition. So it's kind of a comfort food for people, and it's heavily used to neutralize the bitterness of coffee. So next slide, thank you. And I think lastly, yogurt. Vietnamese consumers have been consuming yogurt to help with digestion and improve health for many years. And there's a growing health awareness around yogurt as being a healthy product. The country produces about 390,000 tons of yogurt, and that's 2019 at an increase by 17% compared to 2018. It's one of the fastest growing segments, and is expected to grow significantly, reaching a total volume of 240 tons in 2020. The production of yogurt is using traditional fermentation as a natural lactic acid fermentation, and the use of milk hydrolysis enzymes, and the addition of thickening additives. Yogurt fermented yeasts of different enterprises are different and mainly imported from France and Denmark and Holland to create unique flavors for each enterprise. So a little bit about the analysis of the dairy market. We have the strengths are consuming of dairy products is rapidly increasing, and there's low domestic production of dairy, and there's substantial structural shortages. Per capita weakness consumption remains low compared to other countries. There's no traditional usage of low consumer awareness and products such as cheese and butter. Soft processed cheese is currently the dominant cheese in a limited cheese market. The opportunities with the protection under the new FTA, many offer opportunities for cheeses that are not soft produced. And food service channels provide a way to introducing consumers these other non-traditional products. The challenges, Vietnamese dominates and New Zealand hold the strongest position with dairy. And there is rapid increase in local and domestic production. And there's a restriction from cold chain and logistics that prove challenging for importers. Next slide, please. On the dairy chain, historically, Vietnam has never had experience extensively with dairy and milk usage. And the first cows appeared in Vietnam in the early 20th century. However, it's only become popular in the 1990s. Before the Doi Moi reforms in 1986, dairy farming in Vietnam was managed by state-owned dairy farms. And the size of these dairy farms was limited to a few hundred cows. So the value chain was quite simple then. Dairy farms produced raw milk and then sold it into state-owned distribution companies. And these companies then sold it to the final consumer with fixed price prearranged by the authorities. So the productivity and the number of cows suffered as a result of that. And there were no financial incentives for dairy farms to produce more than the quota set by the government. Next slide. Between 86 and 2000, the reforms of Doi Moi spurred the first commercial trends, where we started to see the state-owned farms spread out to other regions, but in neighboring areas in larger cities like Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. And due to the low starting points of the dairy sector, the scale of dairy farms and processing factories was still limited and could only satisfy the demand in a province or small town. Though the value chain was improved, there was a lot of progress still needed. Next slide. By 2015, more than 275,000 cows with a total of 19,000 dairy farms were in Vietnam. And while farmers still lack knowledge about animal husbandry and disease prevention for cattle, which leads to low productivity in some areas, high production costs and unsustainable milk quality compared to other countries still exist. There are many actors in the chain, suppliers who supply feed and heifer machines, dairy farmers, milk collectors, dairy plants, wholesalers, shop agents, retailers, and consumers, which include domestic consumers and international companies. There might be middlemen, which include small milk shops and small care shops that buy products from dairymen and sell these straight to the consumer. Additionally, the value chain of dairy milk has received support by both private sector and the government through multiple projects and policies. Let's talk a little bit about Vietnam dairy imports. So can you progress the slides a couple? There we go, to the next one, thank you. So you might know in terms of other countries, New Zealand is a major source for multiple products and it accounts for 40% of imports for the major category of sweetened concentrated milk. Almost all imports of butter and dairy spreads and roughly 1/3 of cheese imports, and half unsweetened milk products. Other important players are non-EU players for dairy include USA, roughly 1/3 of sweetened and concentrated milk products, and Australia and Thailand, both of which have strong positions. Unsweetened, unconcentrated milk and cream, France accounts for about 1/8 of the imports. Sweetened concentrated milk cream, Germany and Poland have small shares. Germany is, with buttermilk, is the second biggest importer. And Hieu from the Netherlands, Spain, and Poland are all important importers. And France, cheese is the second biggest importer, while Germany is the third for cheese, accounting for around 1/5 of all cheese imports. Next slide, please. So under the new UK-Vietnam Net Free Trade Agreement, the duties for dairy products will be abolished in about 5 years, with shorter staging on most cheeses, milk powders, and liquid milk. That's great. Next slide. And this slide is just explaining the tariffs under the UK-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, and the tariffs for each category you can see there. Next slide, please. Really quickly, the competitive landscape in Vietnam. Next slide. The dairy market is concentrated as the top 10 names. So Vinamilk remains in the leading company with 3 brand names in the top 10, with approximately 45% of the total market share by net sales in 2019. The remaining market share is dominated by Royal Friesland Campina, Nestle, and both foreign multinationals, and a brand called TH, which is a local player. Vinamilk is the largest, as I mentioned, with 13 factories, and they offer a wide range of products with over 250 SKUs. I'm sorry, I forget what SKU stands for. Friesland Campina has operated in Vietnam since 1995, supplying the market every year with over 1.5 billion consumer units of high quality milk under the Dutch Lady brand, for example, Yomost flavored milk, Hoan Hao condensed milk, and Ovaltine, some products you may have heard about. The TH brand is focuses on the milk and yogurt products, and they use the biggest high-tech cow raising facility in Asia. The company enjoys great advantages due to having developed large cow herd and applied modern technologies provided by Israel, the US, and Europe. So next slide. I think in summary, the structural shortage of dairy in Vietnam, Vinamilk accounts for the majority of local production and holds a formidable market share. Multinationals have entered the market, and some engage in local dairy production. Nonetheless, imports remain substantial from New Zealand as an important source, alongside Australia. I think geography plays a role in that, and has a reputation in Vietnam for high quality products. Nonetheless, EU countries also have notable share of imports, Group Bell in particular, and but opportunities are available for importers who examine carefully and then respond to Vietnamese consumer needs and preferences. The condensed milk market is big in Vietnam, but it is already very saturated and highly distributed, which occurs mainly through independent grocers. So differentiation of some kind, whether focusing on benefits or intended uses and consumption methods, is important for new products. I think my last slide. Yeah, thank you. So that concludes my long and skipped over a lot of overview of the dairy market in Vietnam. So thank you, and I'll stand by for questions at the end of everyone's presentations.
Thank you, Brian. That was great. Yeah, we had a couple of sound issues, I think, various times. I think there was a bit of internet interference, but I think we ploughed on through and got through it. So thank you for that. Much appreciated. I'm going to quickly move on to Hieu, who's going to be talking about the regulatory framework for market entry for British dairy products. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Next slide, please. For today, I'm Hieu, based in Ho Chi Minh City, and then with the Department for International Trade. I think some of you may already know my college in the UK regions, the ITAs, and then I work very closely with them, and then also with college in the sector team in London. So you can reach me directly or reach me via the ITA and then my college in London. For my presentation today, I will cover the regulatory frameworks. I think I will not go into the detail, but I will share with you the overview and then what are the key topics that you should be aware of when considering entering Vietnam market. So first of all is the first question when I share with the companies is they should know who are the decision makers, who make the laws in Vietnam and then who implement the laws. And then understand the regulations about the products, including what are the procedures for custom clearance and registrations of the products, and also with the copyrights and trademark. And then at the end of the slide, I will tell you a little bit about the support that DIT provide for companies. Next slide, please. So first, about the decision maker. For any foreign companies, when they come to Vietnam, they are all quite confused because in Vietnam we have 3 ministries. So we call them ministry instead of departments like you have in the UK. So this ministry include Ministry of Industry and Trade, Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. So I put the logo of the equivalent ministry in the UK so that you can easily imagine. For Ministry of Industry and Trade, the equivalent is the Department for International Trade, which I'm working in. And then for the Ministry of Health, so they have a department under them called the Vietnam Food Administration, and that's equivalent to the Food Standard Agency. And then for the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, that is the DEFRA, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. So these 3 ministries, they oversee different categories of the product. For dairy products, most of them lie with the Ministry of Industry and Trade. And for other food products, it would be under the Vietnam Food Administration. And then for plant and animal health products, it would be the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. However, for dairy products, some of the procedures related to this product also covered by other ministry. So you can see here, the Ministry of Health, they also oversee the registration and self-declaration of conformity of the product. And then for Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, they oversee the quarantine inspection of the product. And in terms of the quality standard for the product, it is with another ministry. It's the Ministry of Science and Technologies, and then they will be the one who draft the standards and the technical regulations for them, which I will share later. Next slide, please. So first, I will go with the market access procedure. Unlike any other animal products, they need to get the pre-entry risk assessment before the product can actually be exported to Vietnam. However, for dairy product, they don't need to go through that process. And then I think that's a really good thing, because for that process that we are currently working on for other food products, it normally takes from 2 to 7 years to get the approval. However, before the products can be put on shelves, they need to go through the registration, or they need to go through the shelf declaration of conformity. It depends on the category of the products. On this part, Vincent, the speaker after me, he will share with you the details about this part. So I just go through the overall. And then when the shipment of the product, so when you do the registration or declaration of the product, before the shipment actually arrive in Vietnam, you need to do some procedures related to quarantine inspection. And then I will share with you later. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that Vincent will share about the procedures in detail. However, I want to show you an example of the product self-declaration of conformity here. So this is the self-declaration from Vietnamese fresh milk. For this self-declaration, you can actually do it online. However, you need to have a Vietnamese address, and normally the practice that I have seen from companies that they work with a local partner to do the self-declaration. And for this self-declaration, it will include information about the composition of the product, and then the manufacture day, expiry day, and also you need to declare the standard that the products comply with. And here you can see a sample of the label of the product as well. Next slide, please. So after you do the product registration or declaration, so you need to go through the quarantine inspection. For the quarantine inspection, it applies to a few of the product that I listed here. The difference between quarantine registration that you see on the left side, and then quarantine declaration that you see on the right hand side, is before you do think about sending the shipment to Vietnam, you need to do the quarantine registration. This is like asking for the permit to get the product into Vietnam. And then when you have received a letter from the Department of Animal Health, they will guide you about the animal quarantine. And this lets them mean that they accept your registration. And then you can send a shipment to Vietnam, and then before it arrives at the port, you need to do the quarantine declaration. This is like asking for the animal health officers to actually go to the port and then do the inspection at port. Next slide, please. And then for the product registration, I mentioned earlier that you need to declare the conformity of the products. Here is an overview of the different regulations related to food products. And this, you need to declare information about your conformity with all of these regulations. I think it's not really necessary to go through them in detail. However, I will give you an overview, and then if you have any questions, you can ask me in the Q&A later. So next slide, please. So the first one is the food additives. In Vietnam, they adopt the Codex General Standard for food additives, and then I think you guys are quite familiar with this one. However, they also allow the use of some additional additives for dairy products, and these will be listed in the appendix to the curricula that I have here. However, if you need information or you need the list, I can send you over after this webinar. And then for the flavoring, they accept the list that was set by the CHOI FAO and WHO Expert Committee on Food Additives. However, these flavoring also need to meet the technical requirements that is listed in the national standard of Vietnam. Next slide, please. And then for the dairy products, they also need to follow regulations on pesticide and other contaminants. This includes the maximum residue limits for pesticide and for other contaminants as well. Next slide, please. And then there are also certain regulation on the packaging and the container for food products that you can see here. Next slide, please. And then one of the things that's quite important here is the labeling. And I think this is also one of the common issues that companies face in Vietnam. The most common complaint that I hear from companies is that the label is too small for them to put on the information, the required information on. And we are keep advocating for the change in the labeling requirements. However, currently the regulation is that you need to either label the products in Vietnamese entirely with all the required information, or you can do it like the primary labels in English. However, you need to have secondary labels which contain the Vietnamese translation and some information requires in the Vietnamese law that are not included in the primary labels. And on the right-hand side, that's the product that is labeled in Vietnamese. And the way that you label the product, it depends on how you arrange your logistic and supply chain. So if you, the practice that I have seen is that for product label in Vietnamese, you need to do the repackaging either in a distribution hub or you ship the product to Vietnam and then have the repackaging and labeling here in Vietnam before you put the products on sale. And then for the second way, it means that the products are already packaged and then ready to be sold. Like you can see on the right-hand side. Then when it arrives in Vietnam, normally the logistic companies or the local partner, they will have you to put the secondary label with in Vietnamese on the products. Next slide, please. And in terms of the quality of the products, there are some national standard and technical regulation that set out here for fermented dairy product or yogurt and dairy fat, cheese, powdered milk products, and liquid milk products. I can share with you this translation version of these technical regulation later. Next slide, please. And one of the topics that company may not really aware or pay attention to when they first come to Vietnam is copyright and trademarks. So the rules in Vietnam is quite different because it is not first to use, but first to register. It means that you need to register the trademarks with the National Office for Intellectual Property to get it protected in Vietnam. And I have seen one case of British milk products, and then when it comes to Vietnam, it fails to register the products within the first year. And then we discover a case where the product get replicated in the market with under the same trademark, and then not manufacturing by or imported by this company. And I have supporting that company to raise the issue with the National Office for Intellectual Property. So company, when you go to Vietnam, you should need to be aware of this. And there's some geographical indications protected under the free trade agreements. However, this is we mentioned a lot about the UK Vietnam FTA, but it's not there's no geographical indications protected under the UK Vietnam FTA. However, there's 21 GIs for cheese protected under the EU Vietnam FTA. For example, the Dana blue cheese from Denmark. I think it's worth sharing this information so that you be aware that there's some competitions out there that they have the brand names attached to the locations in the EU, and then I think this gave a really good reputations and then impression for the customer when they market this product. Next slide, please. And then for DIT Vietnam, so our current responsibility is really to focus on the implementation of the FTA, because actually the FTA just became effective a few days ago. And you know that it is not passed by the National Assembly in Vietnam or passed by the House of Commons in the UK yet. So the Vietnamese ministry, they have not really issued any guidance for the FTA. And then we also received some inquiries and questions from companies relating to shipments from Vietnam to the UK and then from the UK to Vietnam. They don't know how to get the export health certificate, or they don't know what's the labels that they should use. So that is our current focus, to ensure that we have the smooth implementations of the FTA. And also part of our job is to advocate for change in the regulations. And in Vietnam, to be honest, that they are have a strong business community in the dairy industry. That however, they are split between the domestic one and the foreign ones, and they are advocating somehow in different directions. But here in the British Consulate and DIT, we will collect information and intel and concern from the companies, and based on that, we will fit in that back to the Vietnam ministry. Because one of the characteristics of the law-making process here is that the ministry, they are the implementer of the laws, but they are also the one that actually draft the law. So it is quite easier for us to fit in with them about any difficulty that you have after implementing the laws. And also we will share any updates or intels on the regulation back to UK companies. One of the cases recently is so the Ministry of Health, they asked for the COVID testing of food packaging, especially frozen food products from COVID hit countries, and we are still monitoring the status of this, and can share with you after this. I think that's it from me, and thank you very much for your listening.
Great, thank you very much. The presentations will actually be available after this, and if you do have any questions, please do pop them in the box so that we're ready for questions and answers afterwards. But I'll quickly move on to Vincent Trelouet, I think I've been told to say, routes to market and export procedures for British dairy products. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vincent Trelouet. You can call me Vincent if you see me one day. I'm going to go through routes to market and export procedures for British dairy products. Next, I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Provigood that I founded in early 2018, and that is established in Ho Chi Minh City. Next chart, please. So I'm going to go through basically three parts. I'm going to cover a part called routes to market, where I'm going to go through quickly the export procedure and give you more details about product registration and self-declaration of product conformity to food safety regulation. And I'll briefly introduce Provigood and our services to support any companies who want to enter Vietnamese market. Any food companies want to enter Vietnamese market. Next chart, please. Yeah, so routes to market, I'm going to go through several points. Basically, we're going to go through retail structure, contribution per channel, shopping habits, take a look at the offline and online channel contributions, have a zoom on price per unit, which is important when we launch a product here. We're going to take a look at the dairy market structure, an important chart also on how many outlets and what types of outlets to target, and then see how we can actually reach these outlets that will be the right ones for your products. Next chart, please. So basically, retail structure, Vietnam retail structure is very different from any other modern economy or UK retail structure. Vietnam is home to over 1,500,000 outlets. The retail structure is very particular. Modern trade is, I would say, only about 8,000 outlets, while traditional trade is about 1.5 million outlets. We've got, out of these 1.5 million outlets, Nielsen is telling us that over 800,000 are off-premise kind of outlets, and 675,000 are on-premise outlets. Within modern trade, we have like above 700 hyper and supermarkets, more than 5,000 mini marts and convenience stores, food stores, and 889 convenience stores. I'd like to highlight that modern trade is operated under 30 different banners, so it's quite atomized yet, and there is a bit of direct import from modern trade from 3 or 4 of the major modern trade retailers here, but that would not, doing direct export to retailers would not give you a good market coverage. Now, modern trade is outperforming general trade. That's true. It's growing faster. Modern trade is growing faster than general trade, but general trade, which has a much wider base, is also growing. Clearly, if you have a mass market kind of product, traditional trade, general trade will be your key channel. When looking at this retail structure and considering dairy products, we also have to take into consideration the food service channel. So Vietnam is home to about 85,000 food service restaurants, over 12,500 hotels, and about 8,000 fast food. Clearly, for each item you're going to launch here, or each dairy item you're going to launch here, considering the channel that is the priority channel will be important, and keeping in mind that for any mass consumption type of item, general trade will remain the primary channel. Next chart, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as I was mentioning, traditional trade contributes to around 87% of the fast-moving consumer goods value in Vietnam. In urban areas, this figure would be lower, and modern trade can contribute, depending on the category of products, to up to 25% to 30% of the total. But now, if we're looking at rural areas, we still have a traditional trade contributing to 91% of the FMCG value. Next chart, please. In terms of shopping habits, we can say Vietnamese visit wet markets every other day and supermarkets every other week. Convenience store and convenience mini-marts and convenience stores are gaining traction, although they are not yet full destination outlets for dairy products. So depending again on the type of product you're selling, either general trade, traditional groceries, or supermarkets or HoReCa players will be the right outlets to target. Next chart, please. Now, online is growing very quickly, but online in Vietnam is accounting for only 0.6% of, is absorbing only 0.6% of Vietnam total consumer spending. So, and it's not expected to change dramatically until in the coming years. We've seen a bit of, as Brian mentioned previously, we've seen that online channel attracted and became a channel to sell a bit of liquid powdered condensed milk. However, again, that would not probably be the first channel to look at, or that may not be, definitely not be the only channel or the channel you can actually consider launching a product with. You'll definitely need general trade, modern trade, and or HoReCa channel to depending on the type of product you're launching again to have a successful launch here. Now, keeping an eye on online channel is of course needed because it's growing very quickly. Next slide, please. The average price per unit in the market of food for food is expected to amount $2.5 in 2021. The reason why I put this figure here is because the average spending and the out-of-pocket of Vietnamese consumers is quite different than the out-of-pocket and spending of UK consumers. And if you're looking for a successful product launch, you may really consider items that are not too expensive, and you may consider small formats. You know, shampoo are sold here in sachet. They may not be, they are primarily sold in sachet. The Laughing Cow processed cheese that we mentioned about previously, and that I used to sell from 2007 to 2009, is sometimes sold per unit. A box of Laughing Cow cheese cost 30,000 dong, so which is about 1.5 USD. So definitely, whatever product you're launching, look at downsize, look at small package or light types of product. For yogurts, do not go over 100 grams. Vietnamese consumers also have small stomach. Dairy product goes into children's stomachs, so keep that in mind. Unless, of course, you are going for food service kind of items such as butter blocks or mozzarella blocks. In these, for these types of products, of course, the bulkier you will be, the cheaper you will be, and that may give you some price competitiveness to go for bulkier products. Next slide, please. Brian already mentioned about this, so basically I'll go quickly, but the Vietnam dairy market is dominated by three major categories: liquid milk, powdered milk, yogurt, and condensed milk. Butter and cheese are growing from a low base. Now, when we look at cheese, it's important to bear in mind that the Laughing Cow processed cheese is accounting for the largest part of the cheese that is sold in retail channel, while Fonterra, cheddar blocks, mozzarella blocks account for the largest part of the cheese sold in Vietnamese market. Next slide, please. What outlets to target? That's a question I was asked here in 2007 when I was actually working on the Laughing Cow distribution strategy. And the first, I put here a few examples of what are the outlets and how many outlets I think it's relevant to target when we launch an imported product. Why? As Brian mentioned, the market is dominated by key local players who are covering a huge number of outlets. So, for example, Vina Milk 110 ml sweetened milk may be present in over 500,000 outlets, 520,000 outlets. Now, if you're launching a liquid milk brand here in Vietnam as an exporter, you may consider that only 60,000 retail outlets may be relevant for you to sell your product. Of course, this would depend on many criteria, such as the product category, the product usage, the product acceptance, your price positioning, and the brand awareness. But actually putting this information together may help you save a lot of time, especially when choosing an importer. For example, I'll take a few other examples. But if you're launching a brand of yogurt here, we may consider that one of the most successful imported dessert here in Vietnam is Zot Monte, which is a vanilla and chocolate dessert. Now, you know, Zot Monte is probably sold into 40,000 outlets. So as an exporter, targeting more than 40,000 outlets may seem to be a bit ambitious, or may seem to be an objective that may be relevant for your import partner. On butter or whipping cream, targeting 4,000 retail outlets seems to be a maximum, while you may rather put the focus on Western HoReCa, where I think it's possible to reach 6,000 outlets. For natural cheese, this will be about the same figures. One of the leading importer here in Vietnam for dairy products called Daitan Viet, New Viet Dairy, and they have I've been working for them for 3 years as their business development director. I've been recruiting the sales manager there, who's still in place. And last time I told him, he told me that they were covering about 8,500. They had 8,500 active customers. So and they are the largest HoReCa importer here in Vietnam. So targeting more than 10,000 customers for butter, whipping cream, and natural cheese may not be relevant. As far as processed cheese is concerned, so yeah, when I arrived here in Vietnam, the Laughing Cow processed cheese in 2007, the Laughing Cow processed cheese was sold in about 15,000 outlets. Within 2 years, we managed to put it in 30,000 outlets, and nowadays it is in over 60,000 outlets. So basically, the number of outlets, of course, depends, sorry, of the category penetration. And the processed cheese penetration is about 40 to 45% in urban areas, and about 11 to 15% in rural areas. So actually, having a processed cheese brand, if you want to export processed cheese, or a competitor of the Laughing Cow spreadable cheese in Vietnam, and considering the Laughing Cow as a 97% spontaneous awareness and a share of over 80%, it wouldn't be reasonable, I think, to target more than 15,000 outlets within 3 to 5 years. And so these figures can be kept in mind whenever you approach an importer here, whenever you set distribution targets, and whenever you set expectations, considering that these the right achievement of these expectations will also be the conditions for the relationship with your import partner to remain good. Next slide, please. So there are different ways to actually reach the number of the outlets, the number of outlets you target. I would say that going directly to retailers is probably not recommended to start with, unless you want to do that for 1 or 2 years only. But it won't give you a good market coverage, and it will probably, considering that the largest retailer here in Vietnam would not have a market share that's over 10%. So it's basically going direct to a retailer is basically closing 90% of your market. I would highly suggest you go through an importer, a distributor, and who will basically sell your products to retailers and large food service operations. Now, it can also be recommended, if you're not familiar with Vietnamese market, to take a brand representative, maybe not an agent, but a brand representative. An agent is often perceived as somebody who is taking a commission with a very low value added, but I think a brand representative, and having here somebody on the ground who knows the market well and who has relationship with importers, distributors, can help you save a lot of time. So it may not be luxury when going on this market to have somebody on the ground. You may also send one of your collaborators on the payroll of a company like mine to have to ensure this presence. It's basically your importers and distributors, yes, will give you an access to retailers and large food service operations. Keep in mind that reaching all these general trade outlets may, in most of the case, importers will have to sell to sub-distributors and sometimes sub-distributors who are basically covering retailers themselves. Next slide, please. Okay, about the export procedures, I'd like to take you quickly through food safety regulation, self-declaration of product and conformity, and registration of declaration of product conformity. Next slide, please. Okay, so an important thing to keep in mind is that food product exported to Vietnam must comply with Vietnamese food safety regulation. Hieu mentioned already about the Decree 15/2018. I precise that because in many Western companies, quality department people think that because products are matching their country regulation, they will be matching other country regulation. It's actually not the case, and it's important to really keep that in mind. So Vietnam has its own set of technical regulation, food safety regulation, and we can of course help you go through all these to make sure that your products are complying with it. The food product registration in Vietnam can be basically self-declared or declared. So basically what you have to, I mean, the importer or your local partner will basically be the entity to do this declaration for the exporter. There are a few things that you should keep in mind to make the job of your importer easy. It's basically that your product, for example, will have to, the production date must be printed on your product. That would avoid your importer to change the sub-label at every shipment. Basically, most of the dairy product can be self-declared. The type of product that have to be declared or registered are only for special dietary food, medical food, mixed food additive, or food and dietary product for children of up to 36 months of age. So basically your local partner will guide you through the procedure of self-declaration and will ask you to provide information that is needed to do that properly. I also would like to mention that there is about 400 food additive authorized in Vietnam. So the list is available, and you may priorly check that your products are not containing any unauthorized product or any unauthorized additive before doing the test or the analysis of your product. I will also highly recommend that all analysis on your product and tests on your product to be performed in Vietnam. In Vietnam, authorized laboratories. I've seen cases where, I mean, the analyses were made in Europe, but it's not ideal to do that. Next slide, please. Since we are running out of time, I would like to skip self-declaration of conformity and next slide, please. Registration of declaration. I think that can be further detailed in the Q&A session, or we can also be in touch later on to reply to all your questions regarding these two procedures. I'm being asked to wrap up now, so I would like to say just a word on Provigood. We are basically so Provigood has been created to support the development of food companies in Vietnam, no matter what their project is. We are a consulting and trading company. I've been personally selling food and beverage in Asia for over 18 years. been working for large FMCG companies like Bell, Lactalis, New Viet Dairy, which is the largest food importer in Vietnam, and Group Casino. Next slide, please. We're basically working with over 250 experts. So we provide tailor-made business development services, and we can actually bring into our project team the expert we need, whatever the mission is, whatever mission we handle. 360 degrees and tailor-made services means that you can ask us anything about about the market understanding, your market entry strategy, about sales development, marketing, trade marketing, about looking for partners, of course, about accompanying your partners here on the ground. How we operate is very simple. We basically help you define the content of each assignment. We put your ideas into strategy, your strategy into plan, and your plan into action. We basically look at your briefing, and we'll be sending you a very detailed offer of assistance and fees, whatever is your briefing. These are some of the customers we've been working for. As far as large companies are concerned, you might be familiar with Pansani, Pasta, and Andros, who is a fruit processor, or LDC, which is the largest poultry manufacturer in Europe. 100% of our customers are satisfied with our service. So please just share your briefing, and we can obviously take care of the rest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vincent. Yeah, great. If anybody has any questions, please do pop them in the box below. We've got about, I'd say we've got about 5 minutes for some questions before the end of this. If I can ask the rest of the panelists to pop their cameras on, that's great. Thank you. I've got a question. I mean, in your opinion, you know, what do you see as the opportunities for dairy? You know, the real sort of key areas for dairy that you think would be an opportunity for British companies? Whoever wants to take that.
Is it a question? It's a question for me, Lucy?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it can be for any of you, but yeah, Vincent, please do. Where do you see the sort of real opportunities in the dairy space?
Okay, I will see the personally, I will see the opportunity on desserts and natural cheese.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of natural cheese, you mean obviously not the non-processed side of it, but you know, the cheddars, mozzarellas, that kind of thing.
Well, in terms of cheddar is something we can sell in Vietnam if we can be. I mean, in retail channel we can sell a bit of cheddar. Obviously, the largest part of it will go to HoReCa channel. So if we are competitive with Fonterra cheddar blocks, yes, we can enter this market or this segment. Mozzarella, of course, mozzarella, cheddar, processed cheese blocks are products that processed cheese slices as well may be looked at. Both in food service and retail channel. Okay.
And in terms of, you know, obviously you said previously that, you know, it seems to be mostly food service where the non-processed cheese side of it is most prevalent. Is that going to be the case in the future, or do you think it is still moving into the retail side of it?
It's moving to the retail as well. I mean, the number of cheese that are on shelf now compared to what was on shelf in 2007 has dramatically increased. So obviously it's also in retail and in modern trade. However, filling a container with product for retail only might be still a bit complicated. So I would suggest to have a mix of both food service type of items to fill the containers and a bit of retail items to that we can actually value better and sell at a higher price into the container. So having both, I think, is good. Logistic
and in
wise.
terms of sorry, what were you? Sorry, carry on.
No, I'm finished.
And in terms of other products, so would in other areas, so maybe the drinking milk side of it, or the children's side of it, what do you see happening in those spaces?
Drinking milk market is huge and is growing fast. So launching drinking milk is something that I think is possible. I think there is still some space in the market to do it. If we do it with a small format, sweetened and or slightly sweetened or flavored, which is the largest part of the market, if we have additional health benefit to communicate to the consumers, yes, and if we invest in marketing, because then we'll have huge local players who are investing millions of dollars in marketing on these categories. Yes, I think it's still possible to make a breakthrough here. There is not enough milk in Vietnam anyway, so Vietnam is not producing enough milk. So, and the price of liquid milk is quite high in Vietnam actually. Since most of the liquid milk sold in Vietnam is made from the milk powder imported from New Zealand. I think, yeah, there might be room for a UK company to launch, I would say, smart liquid milk products into small format. Same would apply for desserts and yogurts. I think there is still plenty of things to invent here on the yogurts, drinking yogurts category.
And would that be on the sort of long life side of it? Because obviously, you know, shelf life is an issue coming from the UK. So would that be on the long life side of it in terms of the yogurts, etc.?
Yes, at the beginning it could be long life, definitely over 6 to 8 months of shelf life. Now, UK company may also consider the manufacture of yogurts locally, because for this type of product would be way, I would say, more appropriate.
Great. Okay. Do either Brian or Hieu have anything to add before we think about wrapping up?
Actually, I just want to add something to what Vincent just said. So I actually agree that cheese and butter seem to be the potential ones, because mostly they are not really a type of product that people consume. However, I also, from a consumer point of view, I also see those products now are being sold in the supermarket that I went to, and then and especially in the ones that targeted at premium and then consumer, and also there are more restaurants and then high-end restaurants that are serving products that use cheese and butter. So I think that's where we can see the potential. And then for liquid milk products, we also see new products coming from other countries like New Zealand and Australia. They're being sold in the supermarket right now. So if you can find the right market for the products, I think there's still potential for liquid milk products.
Great, thank you. I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. Apologies. We've hit the 11 o'clock. So I just want to say thank you to Brian, Hieu and Vincent for presenting and expanding on all this report. And I think you'll agree it's been extremely informative and hopefully a nice precursor to a visit out there. As I said at the beginning, this report will now be circulated to post-event and will hopefully prove useful. Do take the time to complete the event evaluation. This can be very, very helpful to us, but it only leaves me to say thank you very much for joining us, and everybody stay safe in the UK. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Bye-bye.